Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of our IT Leadership Lab live streams. Really excited to have y'all on. If you are new to the IT Leadership Lab, this is your first stream that you're stopping by, welcome in. The IT Leadership Lab is a community dedicated to IT leaders for them to network with each other, share content, learn from peers, build your community, all of that good stuff. And then to help with that, we also host bi-monthly webinars so that you can learn from actual IT leaders about different IT leadership topics, whether that's management or budgeting, or today we're actually going to be talking about asset management and how a couple of real IT leaders actually manage their own assets. So it should be a good stream today. But before we get started, I'm going to have Abby and Trevor introduce themselves. I know that they have been on plenty of times, so they're no stranger to the spiel. So Abby, I know you just introduced yourself like 2 weeks ago, but do you want to talk a little bit about your journey in IT and also about the MSP that you own now?
Yeah. So my name's Abhi. I am the owner of Barium Networks, an MSP here in Orlando, Florida. I'm actually at a conference in Orlando right now. So, nice big open conference room behind me. Thankfully, there's no session in this room. I've been doing IT since I was in grade school, literally being a sysadmin and trying to figure out and taking care of tickets alongside the real sysadmin that got paid while I was just a student. But it's been a long time of working in a lot of large companies and understanding the importance of managing assets and managing the different items that go through an organization. So I'm excited for this talk and discussing how we can manage assets better.
Awesome. Trevor, how about you?
Yeah, my name's Trevor Stewart. I'm an IT manager for the city of Lakeville. I've been working at this place for almost 20 years now, so I worked my way up from being the person who just has to deploy the assets to now the person who has to manage them. And kind of an interesting juxtaposition to having to count inventory. It's not a lot different than the sales environment I grew up in before doing IT and having to just inventory product and sell it and keep track of everything. It's just now we have to keep track of it for a lot longer. We're not trying to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so really appreciate y'all joining today. And so we can kind of jump into the topic at hand. So when you consider how many IT assets that IT actually has in your environment, it can feel kind of daunting to think about how you can manage them all, especially because IT assets aren't just, computers, they're servers and printers, and some people still have fax machines in their environment. And all of these IT assets have the potential to cause headaches, add unseen costs, and then lead to a lack of compliance. So my first question, and Avi, this might be a little bit different for you, but what kind of systems and tools do y'all currently use to help you manage your assets? And what do you look for whenever you're looking for tools to do that? And Avi, you could also think back to your internal IT days too, and think about tools that you might have used there.
I can speak to ours and give Avi a sec too. Ours has evolved over time. Obviously, I'll use whatever and anything I have on hand to try to keep track of inventory when possible, starting with paper if necessary. I did share an Excel document as one of the IT Leadership Lab blueprints. That was one of our old tracking mechanisms before we got as big as we are now, that would actually let you keep track of inventory, put the serial number and information in there for the product, and then use that for budget forecasting as well. And once we started to grow out of that and it became more difficult to track stuff, we moved to a program called Cartograph, which is an IT asset, or not IT asset management, but asset management platform, which we specifically used for our fleet inventory. And I forced IT into just so we could learn enough about it to help the other departments. The product itself works very well for us and helps us forecast and keep track of stuff, but lacks some of the benefits you get when you're able to do full scanning for different IT asset management products.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is that we in the past we've used tools like Landesk and Altiris to kind of track assets or the digital side when I was internal. Now we use a lot of Ninja and Halo PSA to manage assets, but those are only going to hit the assets that are connected to the network. They're not necessarily going to hit the assets that you need to manage outside of that. And so traditionally, I've always preferred to use Snipe IT or Snipe It, however they want to say it. Um, it's a fantastic kind of IT focused asset management system, but also you can put anything and everything in there. You can put people in there even and manage them as like an HR system almost, not literally, but use them as an asset within the organization. Um, and the important thing for us was just to like we still have to rely on an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of the asset tags, the asset numbers themselves, because you don't know which ones are used or which ones are unused or which one's the next available asset number that you need to print the sticker for, right? Um, and then some systems didn't incorporate what we wanted to do with accounting or finance or with the operations side of the business, and so it was pretty segmented, but the important thing was is that like the data all fed into each other. So we were tracking. At some point, IT was tracking like desks and more facilities stuff. But imagine if you have a data center, that rack that your server's posted in is technically an IT asset. And how do you track that in your system without confusing things or the issue I had was that I bought one of the racks for a business when I didn't know anything with the threaded screw holes. And then we had to replace the rack because we cross threaded all the through screw holes.
Oh,
Yeah, didn't realize that a rack didn't last that long.
yeah, man, it's so interesting whenever people talk about IT, and there's so many like little things that you have to manage that you wouldn't expect,
Mhm.
like just desks and things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
it like one thing that we deal with a lot, and I dealt with my last position, and now as a business owner with an IT company, is like I still have to I still have to inventory that USB cable or HDMI cable that you have because I just shipped you an HDMI cable, and I don't really care about the value of the cable itself, but I need to know that your monitor uses HDMI and that you're using HDMI for your dock, so that way when you have an issue, I can relate it to the products you currently have, and I know what your system and setup is without asking you to take a blurry photo and send it to me from an iPhone to an Android to a Teams to a whatever, and the quality gets destroyed. So just having that information available is hugely beneficial.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I also wanted to ask, uh, what do you usually look for whenever you're looking for tools to help manage your assets? Um, Obviously, plays a huge part in it. But are there any features that you find really helpful? Are integrations really important? What does that process look like when you're looking for a tool?
I'm like, Avi hit a really good point, and the amount of random stuff you have to do, the customization factor in the tools for me is pretty important. Being able to add those different categories so that all of a sudden, if you are having to inventory different things, you don't have to start from ground zero. Integrations are always great, but reporting's some form of reporting is extremely helpful for me when I'm trying to do that. We're running right down the end of our Windows 10 life here, so having machines that you find out aren't capable, that could be inside of your IT asset management software or something like that, or just having some kind of cycle set up so you know that you have a rack, or I just got a drill. I mean, a DeWalt drill that I wouldn't think I would have that I'm going to have to keep in the asset inventory now because we couldn't get a hold of one fast enough to use in our department. Just things you don't think about. I don't know why I would
Or
normally have drill as product category.
and the life cycle of that, right? The battery on that drill is going to go bad eventually.
Yeah.
You have to plan for that. So like for us at least, the features are very similar to what you said, Trevor. It's having all the visibility into computer systems that are being able to be inventoried, like what license of Windows, maybe the BitLocker keys, maybe the actual product key itself to activate Windows, who's logged into it, who's it's assigned to. But then beyond that too, it's all the mundane stuff, and being able to have a system that's able to do both is without it, you're just dealing in way too many systems again, and eventually you'll just fall back on the easiest possible solution, which is just a spreadsheet, and that doesn't really help in terms of scaling.
Mm-hmm.
I like what Tim threw in there as well, the integrations factor. Depending on the size of your organization, even at a small size, at least seeing what your other departments are using to see if you can integrate with them and try to save yourself work in the end. If you can dump something directly into a finance system through an export or directly in there through an API call, that can save you a lot of time when you're trying to get to another step in the process.
Right, and that's the important part. Like the customization you mentioned. If I have an asset, yes, I know that it's a Windows 10 machine. I know it's a Windows 11 machine. I know it's a laptop. I know it's a Surface Laptop 4. Great, but what's the value of that? And there's a lot of inventory systems that don't necessarily have the value assigned or as a field. And so you need to have a system that's able to be customized or already has something like that built in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that Tim made a great point about integrations, and and Trevor, I think you touched on it too. You earn finance brownie points whenever you can, have depreciation schedules and things like that, and pull data that also helps with other teams.
Am I in your way?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And so I think that is a great point. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about how you actually decide on those kinds of asset life cycles. So how do you determine asset life cycles? How does it differ based on the different types of equipment that you have? And what does that look like?
We have a Wheel of Fortune wheel, and we just kind of spin it, and it's got a
Right.
random on it. So
I mean,
sometimes it's been that random when we were just randomly throwing a new product. Surface was a great example. We've been using laptops and desktops forever. All of a sudden, the Microsoft Surface comes out. It's the greatest thing ever. Everyone wants one. What's the replacement cycle on it? I'm like, that didn't work for us.
Yeah.
One of the things I do is just pivot. We try to, if you have the historical data, that's great. Do a little bit of research, but when it's a brand new product, you're sometimes stuck with the best guess.
And I think that's the lifecycle management's getting harder because for a while, we had Moore's law and we were doubling things pretty fast and we were doing great. But then we slowed down a little bit. But now with the advent of AI, everything's changing so rapidly again. And so historically, I've always said a computer can last 3 to 5 years. And that's just based on experience, based on things I've seen where, eventually after 3 to 5 years, either the computers will maybe a little bit too slow or the warranty's bad. It's seen physical abuse. It's no longer useful. So we budget 3 to 5 years for a computer. A server might be closer to 5 to 7 or a little bit longer because you can upgrade it more easily. Heck, one of my servers in my home lab is 20 years old. It's working perfectly fine, right? But what is the purpose of that server? What is the purpose of the equipment you're having? And if your business is working in the AI space, okay, now you're going to need some H100s from NVIDIA. Cool. How long are those going to last? And is the next iteration going to be so much more advanced? Is the next model that you're trying to do, is the next workload you need, is that system going to be able to handle that? And you have to think about not just your needs today, but how the business might change and kind of plan towards that. Even if you don't get there, even if your thoughts don't work out in the end, you still have to start trying to plan for them. And that's part of the life cycle management of different assets in your building.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important too with the updates for Windows, even stuff like that, and then how fast stuff updates. A couple things to keep in mind when I tell people we're buying an asset and I expect it to last 5 years or 7 years. I do give them the qualification that as long as we can continue to update it. We have computers you bought in 2020. Some will go to Windows 11. Some will not go to Windows 11.
Right.
And maybe we can keep them around. Largely, we tend to replace them, but you never know. And then with how quick, like Avi said, stuff's updating so quickly. Sometimes waiting 5 years may save you money on an asset, but all of a sudden it becomes an entire project. Is it no longer an in-place upgrade option? And all of a
Right.
sudden you can't jump from that version to this version without calling in a full crew. So
Right.
it's important to make sure to keep other people apprised of that are part of your process.
And end of life support availability for the manufacturer's sake. Like just last year, we could have bought a Windows 10 machine. Cool. It has a 1 year service life, technically, unless you buy some extended support units, right? So you have to think about not just what the computer, the value, or the asset itself is capable of doing in physically, but the support that you get from the manufacturer, and whether or not that product line or that entire division is set for end of service or end of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you balance proactivity versus reactivity? How often are you able to be proactive when it comes to replacing assets? And how often do you find that to be necessary?
We're well polished and professional IT people. We are never reactive. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're right. Sorry.
I mean, so I think for assets in general, if you know what you have, you know the expected life of an asset, and you should always be proactive in trying to aim for that lifespan or that need.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have to have that reactivity saying, oh, something just broke. It was unplanned. It's going to happen no matter how good you are. How do you fix that? And maybe it's a system where you have some spares on hand and you're not reacting per se. You've proactively gotten some spare systems or whatever in place, and you're able to deploy that and then take your time fixing something. And as things get more expensive or harder to fix, it's important to have either a warranty, a support plan, or a spare unit that you can replace with. And that includes your laptop, your server, your access points, your HDMI cables, everything. So that way you can swap it out real fast without incurring a huge cost to the business, and then take your time fixing the other thing. So that way, again, you're not incurring a huge cost to the business.
Mm-hmm.
I've had pretty good luck with all of the stuff we have historical data on still. Computer-wise, our laptops, we tell people we often will go 4 to 5 years with them. We try to go for 5, and that's at request of finance, but they don't always make it. Either batteries there's not the value to replace them anymore, or you can't get a part. The one that actually has killed me recently, and I've really noticed it in the last 3 months, because once you see something, you can't unsee it. We have quite a few projects that spun up with little bits of IT in them as part of hidden inside of a project we weren't aware of. And we'll go find audio video equipment, just amplifiers and weird stuff like this that's not currently inside of our technology wheelhouse, but it's suddenly ours to keep track of. And then 3-4 years later is when it starts breaking. And I'm like, I didn't know this was here. Like, you didn't bring me into this conference room setup. I have no replacement plan. I don't know what to replace it with. Oh, good, it's end of life. All these things. Those are the ones that have given me the most trouble. And
oh God,
the good thing about working here is as long as I have goodwill built up. So I do feel sorry for the people who walk into it fresh.
and even that stuff that you're not made aware of. Imagine how much time it takes to learn what's in the place and then research the support on that, research the warranty, find the sticker that has the serial number, because those aren't always that easy to see. And it's not necessarily just how slow or fast you can do something to just, fix it. It's what is the business not able to do while that system is down? And I still think that's a big thing that people don't correlate when it comes to asset management, is the downtime and loss of business and loss of revenue that might come from a certain thing not being able to function.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Tim also brought up a great point. An important thing here to understand what gives you the most visibility into your environment? You'll find all sorts of rabbit trails to go investigate that way, but even just seeing the data on your equipment, however you define that, has been illuminating to me personally. I think that touches on what you were talking about, Trevor, is if you have the historical data on things, that helps a ton whenever you're trying to figure out your life cycle. Another question I had for y'all was actually about documenting an asset life cycle. Do y'all have any documentation in place that kind of helps you define roughly how long certain assets might last, any sort of best practices when it comes to those life cycles, things like that? Do you have documentation on it?
It's the hard part is that so much of it is nuanced. You can document. I can create a document that says a server should last 5 years, 7 years, whatever it might be, before you should start to think about replacing it. But what happens when it doesn't last that long, or what happens when it lasts too long, and then how do you determine the changes in it? And you're modifying that document so often that I think having more broad ideas is better, or just getting the data from some type of actuarial table. I don't think it makes sense in our environments, or in my experience, to have our own documentation on the lifespan or the value of an asset. It's referring to outside sources for what those assets typically run for.
Yeah.
One of the biggest benefits we got from switching from Excel to Cartograph helped a lot with that. And I guess any real tool can probably do this. But assuming, I said 5 years for desktops and laptops, but they don't always do that. So it's nice to be able to proactively update those, especially for entire product categories. If you realize you got it wrong, like we did with the Surface, to go make those adjustments and say, no, we're going to take this type of device, phone, tablet, whatever it is, and bulk edit all of them and have a replacement life, like an expected life is programmed in there, and we can change that. So as long as we don't try to, order ourselves something new every year, like some people do, we generally are okay making those changes. Everybody talks about it, but if you're high enough up the totem pole, you just get to order yourself new laptops. That's just the way it is.
I can't tell you how many phones I've replaced. They were perfectly fine phones, but you got to have the latest and greatest phone.
So we're talking about cell phones, like the.
Oh yeah. It's like the
iPhone or whatever.
Yeah, whatever smartphone you have, right? It's like, oh, the new one just came out. I gotta have it. Do you use any of the features? No, you do not. You don't need it.
Yeah. I don't think you need a much better camera whenever you're using it to call clients or something.
That's something that we're dealing with now. It's, AI is great. This Copilot PC, this AI PC. Yes, they are fantastic computers. But are you going to do any of that on your computer? Are you still relying on Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever you're using, right? You don't need certain things on your system if you're going to use other systems. And you can take that idea and start to extrapolate to larger and larger things that you're doing, where, I just upgraded a server myself, and it has 32 gigs of RAM. It doesn't need more because that system doesn't do anything where it requires more RAM. It needs more storage, but it doesn't need more RAM. So I'm not going to upgrade more RAM in that. On the flip side, I have another server that has a terabyte of RAM and like a terabyte of storage. It's almost no storage and a ton of RAM because the purpose of that system is different. And so if you, as IT people, we understand things like that on the technical side of making sure the specifications for a system are for what we need, or we just get it the top of the line everything because we got to have the best of everything. But being able to understand that nuance of different systems helps you understand whether or not an asset needs to be replaced now, or what parts of it might need to be replaced. It's like your car. You don't replace the whole car, just the tires, just the oil. And then the car itself, the main asset, has a much longer life cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I loved Clark's example for his life cycle policies example. For those who can't see the chat and they follow a video on this, somebody just shared that life cycle policies are a must because you seem to have clients that either want a new laptop every single year or you have to pry it out of their cold dead hands. And if that's not a true statement in our world, and it's the same thing with every device, the cell phones Abby just mentioned, everyone either wants the newest cell phone or they, I have to put a hard cutoff on, we can no longer support this because it's not secure. We're taking it from you. I will take this like I would from my children if I must. Sometimes it seems like there's always one employee or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that Beth also said something that's very funny. Make the departments pay for their phones and phone bills. Suddenly those requests slow up. And it's true. As an end user, if I'm not paying for it, sure, yeah, give me a new phone. But if I suddenly have to pay for it, yeah, you won't catch me getting a new phone until I absolutely need it.
But see, that's the problem. Even as the IT managers, we're not paying for it either. It's like you have to think so hard as to, if you buy this phone, it means that the money has to come from the business, which means the business may not have the same budget to buy the certain other thing you need. So what do you want? Do you want, and it's not even as simple as like, oh, you buy the computer or you get a raise, right? They're two entirely separate budgets. They're two entirely separate finance plans, whatever. But do you want the new computer today, or do you want the new phone today, or do you want the new server tomorrow? And which one of those is right? Because that's all part of the IT budget. And if you blow through that budget in the wrong way, you might not have the room to grow in ways that are more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's funny that Tim said that the CFO has ordered 3 computers for herself in the last 3 years. I guess she's looking at the budget and going, "Yeah, it's fine. I got it. I got plenty." I guess I don't need to worry about it. He also said you'll succeed as an IT leader if you make good friends with 3 key departments: custodial, facilities, and finance.
I'm going to throw HR in
true.
there. I'm going to throw HR in there as well. If you make friends with HR, your life is going to be so much easier.
Why is that? If you want to,
because so it's human resources, but on an IT perspective, end users are just assets. They're another thing that you have to track and manage and maintain. And it sounds weird to think of it like that, but if you know ahead of time that a job posting was just made and they're planning on hiring someone in a week, and you're like, oh, we don't have any spare computers, well, guess what? You just got a week to buy one. Ideally, you're earlier and earlier in the HR process, so that way you can order equipment ahead of time. When that person is hired, right, they're tied directly into your IT system. They're set up in your HR system, that person's name. It ends up in whatever ID management system you have. That person gets married and changes their last name. I used to hate those tickets. Well, guess what? It's super easy. It just syncs to my ID system, whatever Active Directory or whatever is, right? The smoothness of your life when it comes to IT in a business, and you're friends with HR, is understated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we're talking about end users, I think there was something that I did want to bring up around shadow IT and how people will bring their own devices or, look for certain things. What does that look like to you? And then do you have any specific stories about how you've had to, about any like shadow IT that you've learned from?
We try to be so internal IT department as a clarifier. It's a little easier than an MSP in this world, but since we get to know all of the users, we try not to make them see shadow IT as some harsh thing, like all these additional bits of technology, and try to create it so that if they want something, they're looking to fill some gap, they come to us first to look how to do it. So we've fortunately been able to avoid horror stories, but we have walked into quite a few people trying to use their own laptop to remote in and not understanding why it doesn't work and not understanding how VPNs work back in the day. Running into COVID was wild and stuff because that almost welcomed shadow IT for a while just to keep our organization up and running. So we've been able to avoid most stuff, but we are in the process of trying to implement a software, some better network access controls to help catch that stuff quicker in case somebody finds their way and unplugs the right device.
Yeah, I think that was what we've tried to do is SaaS management. And so trying to figure out, okay, what random SaaS apps are you using and are they approved? It's like, why are you using Gemini if we're a Microsoft shop? It's like maybe we already have a Copilot license, maybe we already have this, or why are you using Google Sheets versus Microsoft Excel when you have a license for both? Or we pay for a license for one and you're using the free version with your Gmail account on the other versus a business account. And yes, Clark, the duplicate applications, when one department doesn't realize that we already have a license for something else and we already have spare licenses because we bought 10 and then the department was sized in half. Great. We have 5 spare licenses that we can use. So having everything go through IT or finance for approval makes it so that way things are kept. You're able to keep track of things, and you know whether or not something is necessary. A fun, an annoying story for Shadow IT is when I was working at a small business, small company, right? Didn't have any real security or anything like that. Person's computer is offline. I didn't have any tracking systems in place to tell me that a laptop's been offline for ages. Just eventually I was looking through the computers and I said, oh, this computer's been offline for like 2 or 3 months. Huh, that's weird. So then I go over to that person's desk and be like, hey, is your computer? No, he's running a Linux. He booted into Linux and reinstalled the OS and I didn't know. And I was like, what in the world are you fine, I like it too, but you're not allowed to do that. He's like, why not? I'm not doing anything wrong. It's like, oh.
You actually just reminded me of one, Avi. I actually did have a really bad shadow IT thing, and it was actually from a vendor who decided they were doing work for a utility company, a water utility that we support, and they installed a remote access control. I don't remember what it was called, Secura or something like that, but it was this remote access device with a cellular connection that would allow them to back end around all of our stuff into the network that our water systems ran on. And they had these people out there to do work with them, and it's kind of outside of our wheelhouse because it's on the water side, but everything IT they know to go to us, and the guys snuck it in. So all of a sudden they just had this remote backdoor into the system, and I lost it when we found it. But
whoa,
yeah, I mean that's essentially a rat. Like it's literally it's what you it's what you'd literally describe as a remote access Trojan or terminal or whatever, right? It's
that's a horror story to those MSPs out there, because this would have been basically an operational technology MSP doing work for us that decided, well, we don't want to have to come on site to program these, so we'll just stick our own little remote gateway in. And we can do it from wherever.
Yeah, that's like the little stories of vendors or companies that they know their product really well, but they might not know the IT side stuff. They're like, oh, my software is not working. The user needs to be a local admin. That's not how that works, right? Or it's clearly your network. Can you port forward everything to that machine? That's not how that works, right? But so I think that's another thing that you have to kind of think about is how the knowledge that you have is so specific into IT, and the knowledge that your end users have is so specific into their job role that you have to really see it from everybody else's perspective, because otherwise you don't know how the assets are going to interact with that role. You don't know how they're going to use it. I can give I'm on a Surface laptop right now. I love it, but I'm not going to give a Surface laptop to a firefighter or to a police officer or to a construction worker. I'm going to focus on a tough book probably instead. Because then the use cases just differ. So understanding how that person's job works, and those are extreme examples, right? But understanding the job role can make it so that way the assets you get and the assets that you're managing are properly sized for that role.
Mhm.
And tracking those assets are how you know if they're shadow IT or not. If you have the knowledge that you've been around long enough that this was never there, that's great. But if your entire department's only been around a few years and that device looks like it's 5 years old, you might just assume, oh, apparently this is a device we use. No, it's a shadow device that somebody snuck in.
Yep.
I felt bad in water, but oil and gas is even worse.
Yeah. And sure, like, you can, I mean, we've all done it where we've been at a site for so long or been with the same company for so long. Like Trevor, you said you've been there for 20 years. You know so much internally, like to yourself in your own head. But what's from a business perspective, so much of that needs to be documented because you don't want to rely on the memory of one person. Because what if Trevor gets a really good job offer at a competing agent, a different city? Well, he's just going to move, and all that knowledge goes with him. So instead of trying to figure out knowledge transfers, you have to document everything ahead of time, so that way the knowledge transfer is just refer to the documentation. It's all there. We don't have to think about it. It's just already there. And assets are the same thing. You have to just make sure everything is documented so that way you know that shadow IT, like you said. You know what the shadow IT is because you know what is supposed to be there, and you know that the stuff that isn't supposed to be there is outside of that scope.
Mhm. Yeah. It's okay if my dog talks. We value their insight. You don't want to hear her. She's currently patrolling the door, or not the door, the window out there, and making sure no one walks even 10 feet from our house. So, yeah. I don't know if you want to hear her insight. It would be very loud insight. I wanted to get back to something that you had talked about a little while ago, Trevor, about how you have reporting and how reporting is a really important part of keeping track of all of your assets. So what metrics or KPIs do you use to measure the effectiveness of your asset management process? And what are the metrics that you find most important in keeping track of all of your assets? So if you were to create a dashboard, what does that look like?
It depends who the dashboard is for. For my world, a lot of it goes back and dumps into finance. I had to create a special pretty report for them so that they can see a 10-year outlook on what we're expecting, assuming we don't get new assets. And that way we can kind of help keep a balance for if we're expecting to replace a server every 7 years or a switch every 7 years, they'll know what our fund balance is going to be. Just today, we were looking at our inventory just because, please don't laugh, we have one piece of software that is for our police department that just got authorized to go to Windows 11. We have exactly 1 month to roll over all of our squad cars. So we were doing a report to make sure we have a good grasp on which computers are still the Windows 10 versus the few we have that are demoing this Windows 11 product. So that was an important one for us. And then servers too, a very similar server upgrade process. Avi mentioned not having to upgrade the entire system. We went through a process of trying to make sure we had enough memory in certain devices. Things got a little scarce during COVID, and we ended up getting laptops with less memory than we would normally purchase. I had to kind of create a little bit of a report to see what we needed to just buy upgrades for, and what type of memory we would need for each device, and what size. And so it does vary a lot.
And that's specifically to that. One project I worked on when I was working for a large school district, it was we buy as a school district, we bought like essentially the cheapest computer possible for the given use case. So it was probably scoped for what we needed, but at the time we only needed I think it was 256 megs of RAM. This is a while back when I remember this one particular use case, but at some point the new software we needed more RAM. So what are we going to do? Okay, well, we need to buy RAM. How many computers do we have that have 256 megs of RAM? Okay, well, we're going to have to inventory all 30,000 machines and have the proper reporting to get the information to understand how much RAM each one has. Then we have to cross-reference that with the model so we know what slots are available or what if the computer even has capacity to upgrade. And then based on that information, okay, then you take and say, okay, we need to buy 10,000 sticks of RAM. And then you do it. You just buy 10,000 sticks of RAM. It's not that hard. You just click a button. But then you have to also get those, track them, asset there. But the only way you can know how much you need of something is if you're able to have all the data on your asset. So jumping back to the KPI question, I've always tried to make friends with finance, like we've talked about here too, right? Like that's a very important thing to know what information they need. So we will try to track we will try to target a certain amount of spend in a category. If we want new computers this year, okay, each computer costs $1,000. We'll buy 5 computers. We're going to budget $5,000. How close did we get to that number in the given year, in the fiscal year? Did we spend more? Did we spend less? Did we purchase 5 computers? Did we purchase more or less? And so understanding just what your target was, what your budget was, and then how close you got to that at the end of the year. Not necessarily from a finance perspective, but understanding whether or not you are properly understanding and properly documenting. That's not the right word. It's your life cycle, right? It's properly making sure that your life cycle management is accurate, and make sure that you're not saying a server should last 5 years consistently, and then all of a sudden every 3 years you have to fix something. It's like, okay, maybe use that information to change your life cycles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just reminded me of something that we talked about very early in the customizations that these products can offer. Being stuck in a fixed solution would have been detrimental to like the long-term planning Abhi was talking about, because I don't know about you guys, but back in the 256 megs of memory days, when we had our assets, we did not track the memory that was in those assets. We did not track the CPU or the hard drive size, and all of these things have become more and more important. And now we're getting into whether or not they support AI, what version of Wi-Fi they can use, what kind of encryptions they can handle. Who knows when quantum encryption is going to be coming out. So having the ability to get a product that won't constrain you and will let you continue to tag all that stuff on as you realize it's important and get it up to date as quickly as possible is a very important process of this inventory thing, and something you just have to constantly be able to adjust for.
That's one thing I really don't like about new computers. Yes, they're thin, they're amazing, but soldered RAM is impossible to fix.
Oh yeah. I've stopped buying entire lines of products, when I found out they were soldered and I didn't catch it in the original.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all like the big questions that I had. I know we're a little bit early, but do y'all have any kind of final pieces of advice for people that might be trying to improve their asset management process?
I think one thing that helped me was to actually sit down and figure out what your pain points are, because the system you're currently using, it might be good enough. It might just be that you're using it the wrong way, or that you don't know of a certain feature, but you don't know what to look for if you don't know what your actual problem is. So you might feel that it's not working out fine, but unless you sit down and really think it out, and heck, use like ChatGPT to have a sounding board off of and try to figure out like, oh, I'm doing this. Does that make sense? To just trying to figure out what you're trying to do. So that way, if you do need to upgrade or you do need to improve your systems, you know how to actually improve them. Oh, and then one thing, if you're going to put asset numbers on machines, plan for 10 times the number of assets than you have currently. Don't start with 3-digit asset numbers, because you'll run out real fast.
I think My biggest recommendation is along the lines of getting started. If you're not sure where to start, a little bit of the shameless plug, but always feel free to just ask in the IT leadership lab area so you can get some kind of guidance as well. If you get a policy in place to start getting your incoming assets in properly, then you'll stop generating larger amounts of work because as stuff gets replaced and we still have items. And I'll admit, we originally started our asset process. I had not planned to inventory docks or monitors. So we kind of let those go as just smaller items. But then we decided we wanted to change our replacement cycle to have a different replacement cycle for monitors than computers. Now we're having issues with docks, Thunderbolt 1.4 USB-C. Not USB-C is not very universal. I have way too many issues with non-compatible USB-C. So now we have to go back and play catch up on some of this stuff. But what you try to do first is any monitors going forward that are going out, we're trying to make sure that those get inventoried. So that way, as we have time to go play catch up and go after items, we're naturally sourcing stuff out, but everything new will always get added into the inventory system. And a lot of it's just going to be down to getting the procedure down so you can start coaching people on your team. And I still run into it. We have people that are better than others about putting stuff into our management system, and it just takes a lot of work just to stay vigilant about it, and eventually it gets caught up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I noticed you had one question in here too about people that were, if you have people pushing on you that it's an IT problem, that the stuff is inventoried, you'll run into that with people who have stuff at home. They don't want to give you help. Man, I just bring it down on them hard. Like I've done stuff to people, like just shutting off access, pulling away credentials and stuff like that. I don't have a lot of pushback, but you don't want to lose track of your assets, and you can't let people bully you on something that just needs to be done. I have plenty of departments that are doing their own asset tracking for stuff that's kind of outside of my world now, and they're the ones who start to look like the fools. So just push really hard on people to get you the information that you need so you can track it and do your job properly, and let them start to look like the people who don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you said for like, depending on the size of your organization, like Trevor, you might have a lot of segments and divisions, and you kind of just do the IT. You have another department that does something else. You might do this and that, right? But depending on how your organization is structured, like for one job, I was the IT person and the facilities person and the security person and the safety person, right? I was everything that wasn't the rest of the company. But that also means that I have to inventory the computers. I have to inventory the servers. I have to inventory the ID badges and access cards for our remote office. I have to inventory the fire extinguishers so that way we can get them inspected when it's time to get them inspected. So it's understanding everything that you are required to do in your job role or in your department role. Because as much as we like to say that IT is separate from facilities, it happens too often that we are the same. And so understanding what you have access to or what you need to be responsible for, and then how you can improve the asset management for other departments that you might not have responsibility for, can help make it so that way the whole company, the whole organization is working cohesively to manage all of their assets.
Mm-hmm.
You can avoid the double software purchases we talked about as well. If you already have the product in your area, if you're the first one to get it, you can make it easier for people to push towards the product you want to use versus spinning off and something else. So don't hesitate to be the one in front of that, the first sales pitch.
Well, awesome. Thank y'all for joining today. I think this was a really, really great conversation. A lot of people in chat had some great things to say. So I'll be posting a wrap up of this today with kind of some of those key points that we had discussed here. But yeah, in the meantime, I appreciate y'all being on. We'll be back on in a couple of weeks talking about managing up. So improving upward influence. Oh, Abby?
It just reminded me. So we are trying to get really good at asset management as the IT support for your organization. think about how you can learn lessons from your job and incorporate them into your personal life. And think about when you're trying to figure out what kind of assets I need to manage or what kind of assets I need to inventory in the job. Think about how complicated your home is. And a really fun way, I think it's fun, a really fun way to figure out how complicated your assets actually are is to inventory everything for the purposes of insurance. That if your house caught fire and you needed to replace everything, how many tubes of toothpaste do you actually have? And it gets very complicated very fast. And what kind of toothpaste? What size toothpaste, right? Do you have a bar of soap or do you have a specific Dove soap? And that matters. And being more specific in certain areas is very important, and being broad in other areas is important. But you have to learn how to balance that and figure out what you need to do for your job role, your organization.
Yeah, that's really great information to have on hand, and really helps you have a clearer picture of everything. So, well, yeah, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. Here is the link for next week's stream or 2 weeks from now stream, where we'll be talking about managing up. But in the meantime, thank y'all for joining. Thank y'all for contributing. And yeah, we'll see you in the lab, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. All right. Take care. Bye, y'all.